Hi, this is Helen from Jupiter's Realm, and today I want to have a little look at the upcoming square between Mars and Saturn and what this might mean and how we can work with this. So Mars moves into Sagittarius on the 24th of November and immediately makes an exact square with Saturn in Pisces. The aspect perfects on the 24th through to the 25th, but it's still within a 3-degree orb until the 30th, and so it could still be felt through to then. Squares have the nature of Mars and indicate a point of tension, stress or frustration. There's a clash between the planets involved, with both sides pushing to carry out their own agendas, which can lead to friction. So squares can indicate a need for some work or some adjustment for either side, or maybe even compromise to get something productive out of that. And squares also give us impetus to do that. Here are some keywords for Mars. Mars represents heat, force, speed, contention and conflict, rebellion and impulsiveness, but also determination, independence and individuality, a boldness, assertion. It's the planet of courage and defence or protection, high energy, activity and action. Saturn, on the other hand, represents the opposite. Saturn's the planet of time and patience, wisdom through experience over time, the consequences of actions, responsibility, limits, boundaries, and overall has a cooler and slower quality than Mars. In a square aspect, there's the potential for the clash of these qualities, with both planets kind of bumping up against each other. And with Mars and Saturn being so different, this can lead to stress points. Mars will also still be combust and is no longer in its domicile, where it had a more constructive expression, being protected from combustion. So now, having moved in Sagittarius, this does add a restless and rebellious quality there. We have Mars, the planet of speed and force, coming up against a planet of rigidity and slowness. So, as I said, this can generate some frustration, irritation and even conflict if not managed with awareness. So you might feel this coming through in the area of life where Sagittarius and Pisces fall in your chart. So have a look at the house topics for those places, and also check if Mars or Saturn are making any aspects to your natal planets in the other mutable signs, where you might then feel some of this energy coming through as well. Sagittarius is a fire sign and does have a reckless, impulsive and rebellious side, which amplifies and emphasises the similar Mars qualities, with Mars being there. And so there's a lot of this fiery independence and impatience coming through. But Mars here is also able to have focus and drive with a visionary, optimistic zeal. There could be the desire for exploring new experiences or horizons, and moving forward in an expansive way, perhaps with broad-ranging goals and ideals or plans, and with action driven by enthusiasm, optimism, hope and desire for stimulus, for meaning, or perhaps even a cause to fight for. Mars in Sagittarius has focused, determined vision for which direction to go and what to achieve. And there's a real sense of feeling that something is achievable here, something is possible, doable. Sagittarius is a sign of optimism, and Mars represents a bold, can-do, let's just go for it energy. So Mars and Sag can be really good for getting things going, getting things off the ground, and having the courage, drive and determination to push forward regarding the house topics where this will fall. But with all this fire energy, of course, there's the potential for moving ahead too fast or impulsively and not thinking about the consequences, and then perhaps getting burned out too. Now, Mars is in a superior, overcoming position to Saturn. So this Mars energy that I've just been talking about is likely to be the dominant energy for this transit. So you have all of that running into some pushback signified by Saturn and Pisces. On the one hand, there's Mars wanting to push forward with a lot of energy and vigour, and then there's Saturn saying, no, hold on a minute, let's just slow down. A key approach with this transit is to be aware about this potential, because, if you continually push against something that's rigid with speed and force, well, eventually something's going to break. And Saturn aspects often indicate that there's likely to be a need for some patience and not being so impulsive, for being realistic and taking the time to consider one's actions and the consequences of those. Whereas Mars, by contrast, can often indicate just jumping into things first and thinking about the consequences later. So slowing down might actually be more productive long term, even if you're chomping at the bit to get going. It might feel like something or someone is putting a damper on those things around the Sagittarius house topics and the themes of independence and individuality, but a measure of realism and practicality might be what's needed to make meaningful progress with that. It might be important to think about things like, do you have the time, money or other resources you need, or even the energy to do what you want or are planning to do? Or are those things in the right condition or state to be of help right now? Are adjustments to those needed? Or are planned actions irresponsible in some way? So I think it can be helpful to have some contemplation about that so that you can work better, smarter, more realistically with what's available. This influence of slowing things down or getting some kind of pushback might be from people in authority or via rules, regulations, or established organisations, frameworks, or even traditions, and from the sphere of life where Pisces falls in your chart. So that might feel a bit like a wet blanket on all that drive, optimism and hope of Mars, and like running into a wall. So it's a case of finding a way to meet the need for the energy, drive and action of Mars, and giving that a constructive outlet, whilst giving space to and acknowledging the Saturnian requirements of taking a more measured, responsible and grounded approach. Even though it might feel frustrating to have to address this, it can be beneficial in that it does provide an opportunity to have a reality check, whereas otherwise something might have been overlooked. How practical are those actions? What's really necessary? What are the pitfalls? And so the chance to figure that out and resolve any potential issues. And that can save a lot of time and trouble in the long run. It might mean having to compromise by taking a few steps at a time, staggered bursts of action, rather than trying to do everything quickly and at once. Or making sure there's firmer foundations, structures, frameworks or boundaries that are in place to support those actions and give more stability or control. And Saturn can also bring longevity to what might otherwise be short-lived Mars actions. But also, both Saturn and Mars are in Jupiter rule signs and Jupiter's in Taurus. That adds to this sense of needing to proceed at a more stable and consistent pace and having a level of groundedness rather than having a complete gung-ho approach. And what I like as well is that they share some connection through having the same rulership, which does give some ground for being able to access some level of connection, maybe even cohesion, although I think it will take some effort or work to bring that out as a productive result. Something else this aspect could present is the need to cut away some structures that might have served their purpose. Mars is associated with cutting and separation, and so through this square, this might involve carving up something that's too rigid, structured or traditional that Saturn represents. Mars wants to disrupt Saturn and shake up that traditional order, and that in itself can cause tensions, and so this is also something to be mindful of. Something helpful that I think the Mars-Saturn aspect may provide is an opportunity for breaking through negative limitations such as fear, doubt or lack of confidence. Saturn represents caution, doubt and fear and limits, and sometimes there can be a fine line between being cautious and being fearful. Is that caution helping you, or is it hindering you by stopping you gaining experiences or taking action that's needed? Maybe past experiences have resulted in being overly cautious or fearful, and the opportunity might come up through this transit to confront that and embrace the courage to break through it. It may be worth seeing if there are systems, structures or limits that you can set up or implement that helps give greater confidence to step outside self-imposed limits based on fear, and maybe even take a risk on something that you haven't felt able to do before. Both Sagittarius and Pisces are mutable signs which have a quality of changeability and adaptability. So I think being open to having a level of flexibility can help with making these kind of adjustments and could be helpful rather than being too rigid in approach. And I think if we can take the wisdom of Saturn and apply some of that in terms of taking the time to have that reality check during this period, and perhaps embrace a certain amount of supportive structure and sensible restraints so that action taken isn't negatively impulsive or destructive or too short-lived, then I think that would be a really helpful approach for this transit. As a final thought, I think what's also notable is that Mars this month is just beginning a new 2-year cycle with the Sun, which it began on the 18th of November when the Sun moved into conjunction with Mars. So at this point we're still at the early stages of this new cycle, which is like a reset or a restart point for Mars. a time where we can be considering Mars topics in our own lives and how we want to approach and work with those going forward. For example, what actions do we want or need to take, and how do we want to do that in the future? How do we feel empowered as an individual? Or what do we feel called to fight for or defend? Where or how can we find the courage we need to confront challenges in life? With Mars being so close to the Sun and under the Sun's beams, I think there's also an element of needing to really look deep within to uncover that, to look at what's beneath and what may be in the shadows or hidden to bring that forth. So I hope this has been helpful. Let me know in the comments how the transit goes for you, or even your past experiences of the Saturn-Mars transits. And if you like the video, please hit the like button, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye for now.